Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Mentimeter webinar. I'm so happy that I see so many of you already joining. I really appreciate your time and efforts today. My name is Silvia, and I will be your host today. To get us started, please scan the QR code that is on the bottom left side of the page, or click on the link that my lovely colleague Neil has put in the chat. I would like to know which institution do you represent today. And I would encourage you, if you see your institution in bigger letters than the rest of them, that means that there is someone else from your own institution joining you here today. So feel free to find each other in the chat, exchange ideas later on, and just be Menti co-friends today. Once again, we will get started very shortly. I just want to make sure that everyone is on board and ready to participate in the session. We will be using quite a lot of interactive activities here today, and I want to warn you that this won't be a passive lecture. I will do my best to give you a good active learning experience today that helps you absorb the information better, but also take it in a bit of a more productive way. I will wait for just a few more moments because I see that there's still people coming in. So I want to make sure that everyone is connected and ready to go. Once again, scan the QR code on the bottom left or click on the link that Neil has posted in the chat and let us know which institution you represent today. And I see that it's a good variety of Canadian and American institutions. Hello to the fellow Canadians. I'm personally based in Toronto, and I might have the pleasure of meeting some of you, maybe throughout this year or before. Wonderful. If you're yet to log in, don't worry about it. I'll move on. The QR code might not be there, but the link in the chat that was posted by Neil will remain. So you still will be able to connect and submit your votes going forward just by simply clicking on that link. Now let's move on. Go Blue Jays. I would like to do a very quick admin check over here. We're exploring if trainings like this one should come with certification. So I'm interested, would you find that beneficial? Is this a need for you? Is it something that you would appreciate? Or is just attending and learning all that matters to you? I have a second screen here, so once in a while I keep an eye on the chat and I see Phoenix saying that they have a colleague from Canada and we're told to say go Blue Jays, so go Blue Jays indeed. Perfect. For the sake of time, I'll move on. We'll take this. We can't promise anything for those of you that feel strongly about certificates, but we're exploring this to make sure that you get the right recognition for your learning and development journey. This is a very quick introduction, so you know who is speaking to you quite a lot today. As mentioned, my name is Silvia, and I'm a faculty development and student engagement specialist here at Menti. I'm deeply passionate about fostering inclusive teaching practices, but also redefining that student-instructor relationship and making it a bit more modern. I read a lot. I have 2 dogs, and you can also find me on LinkedIn if you want to chat a bit more later on. Now, the agenda for today is quite exciting. We'll talk about the brain. We'll talk about learning. We'll talk about teaching. We'll talk about how you can use Bloom's taxonomy not just to create learning objectives, but craft questions that you can use in your formative assessment exercises and active learning. We'll, of course, talk about Menti, and we'll ask and answer as many questions as we can today. So if at any point of time you have a question, at the very bottom of your Menti page, there is a button called Open Q&A. Please feel free to use that button to submit a question that you might have in mind. It will be collected over here. My colleague Neil will moderate that, and he'll push the questions forward. And then I'll be able to stop and answer any questions along the way. You don't have to wait until the very beginning of the session to get your questions answered. Neil is also in the chat, so we'll be able to help you out, but I encourage you to submit your questions in the Menti for simplicity. And let's hopefully have some fun. Why we are here today is that your students' answers will only be, as ever, as insightful as the questions you ask. And today's session is designed to show you the importance of questions, but also the pitfalls of potentially challenging questions. We will do, once again at the very end, an active exercise that we'll be using Bloom's taxonomy to show you the importance of questions. But before that, we'll be focusing a little bit on how our brains function and what kind of experiences and what kind of information our brains need in order to process information better. Many of the questions we ask are actually the ones potentially holding us back. And this is just a list of potential pitfalls, but of course there's many other edge cases out there that can be preventing us from having the proper insightful learning experience that we hope to give our students. Sometimes just asking too much of which of these is correct or true or false questions can lead to stagnation in learning because our brain becomes accustomed to the same flow and it's not being challenged. We sometimes maybe rely a little bit on the recall on the questions, just remembering information. We are not necessarily pushing our students to critically assess information, or maybe we're asking them questions that are a bit too complex. Sometimes relying on the same formats of questioning can also be a challenge because, once again, going back to the brain, it becomes accustomed to a specific form of thinking, and that becomes rather limiting. And as briefly mentioned, sometimes we ask too complex questions. We all probably suffer from the curse of knowledge. It's easier for us as subject matter experts in a specific field to forget what it is not to know the material we are presenting. We have such a deep knowledge of it that sometimes going back to the very basics of it can be challenging for us as well. And the biggest pitfalls overall is not utilizing Bloom's taxonomy when we're asking questions to make sure that our students are pushed into higher order thinking skills, not asking enough questions, and also accepting naked answers that are brief, answers that don't actually show learning, but are there to just confirm a potential overall understanding. So we'll keep those questions in mind, or those challenges in mind, when we move on going forward, for you to see the difference between potentially these ones and the ones we'll be exploring further on. We'll talk about brain-friendly learning today, and one thing I want to mention here is that I am not an expert in the brain. I'm not a neuroscientist. What I know, however, is that brain-friendly learning involves strategies that align with how our brain works, how our memory works, how cognition works, how we as humans work. And it won't be, today's session won't be anything about the very complex science behind brain-friendly learning. It will be about the science of who we are as humans and what it takes for us to process information. Now, I would like to do a quick temperature check in here. According to your own experiences and knowledge, what do you think are the characteristics of brain-friendly questions? And I'll pop up the QR code once again in here because I see that we have more people that have joined us recently since the beginning. Please feel free to scan that QR code or click on the link that was posted in the chat before by Neil to join the session and answer this question. I already see a few notes of answers that we'll actually uncover in the next slide. This is great to hear. I'll just wait for a few more moments to make sure that everyone has submitted answers. And what I will do later is I will group these responses based on sentiment and themes using Mentimeter's AI features. We have a variety of self-reflection, to simplicity, to the questions being applicable, to them being clear, easy to read on first listen, categorized. Let's see what the power of AI will tell us. You all have answered here as a collective group. Clear wording, open-ended, tapping into prior knowledge, multiple choice, then being wrapped around self-reflection, critical thinking, synthesizing, challenging, application. Wonderful. Why I wanted to ask this question is because most probably a bunch of the things we discovered today won't necessarily be brand new to you. Our goal with today's session is to make those learnings clear and actionable. So the next time you meet your students, you'll be able to easily take those best practices and implement them in a quick and simple way. And here we have a brief version of those characteristics. And you already mentioned it. The questions need to be clear and simple. They don't have to be easy, but they have to be easy to understand. Those questions that are easy for us to grasp will help us reduce the cognitive overload and will allow us to focus a bit more on the actual content and tap into the knowledge that we have, instead of using brain power to decode the wording or figure out exactly what is required of us to answer the question correctly, if there is a correct answer. And over here is where we potentially face the curse of knowledge the most. If we are not capable of simplifying the way we ask questions, even if we are asking our students to answer a complex scenario, for example, it will be quite hard for our students to do that as well. The questions should be relevant. When a question connects to your prior knowledge or real life example, or maybe a history you've had and experiences, it triggers genuine, stronger neural pathways in the brain itself, and it allows us to connect to that content a bit better. The question should also vary in format, activating different areas of the brain and our memory, going back to that topic of we don't know if our students would feel confined by the questions we ask, and we also don't want them to feel kind of like on the flow with the questions and feel extremely comfortable in those questions, just because they can recognize patterns in the way we ask the questions. And last but not least, good questions are connected to emotion and trigger curiosity. We are all genuinely curious, I would say, as human beings. So if our questions help us with that, we can definitely make stronger connections in the brain itself. Now, knowing overall what brain-friendly questions are, this is a pen on image. Can you place the dot on that picture into the confidence meter here in terms of your own, maybe not confidence per se, but comfort in asking those questions? Do you see comfort in those, or do you see comfort in ones that are a bit easier maybe for you to process? Okay. Wonderful. We have an overall positive confidence here. We have a few folks that are here a bit on the left, but I do hope that by the end of this session, we'll be able to move most of you to the right. Maybe the folks that are here at the very end of it might already feel comfortable already, but our goal once again for today's session is to show you practical examples to build that confidence that we might be lacking in some shape or form today. Everything we do today, I want you to remember one thing. The brain is social. We are social. Even if we're more introverted, even if we learn in a different way, the way we are built as humans, it's wrapped around experiences. It's wrapped around knowledge that is connected from real life applications, from history, from maybe chatting to other people, to seeing how they're doing stuff. So everything we uncovered today, I hope you always have that little umbrella on top, that it needs to be wrapped around peer-to-peer learning. And Menti thankfully is designed to help with that, because even if we're not speaking to each other directly the way we're doing today, we still have the ability to exchange information. We still have the ability to show each other what we know, help one another, and also inspire one another. Another thing to remember, the attention of an average human spans from anywhere between 8 seconds to 15 minutes. So it's really hard for us to keep anyone's attention, including today. I'm sure at one point you'll wander off, you'll think about lunch or dinner or picking up your child from daycare or your next vacation or whatever it is. It's natural. It happens to humans. I will do my best to show you today how you can work with that attention span by chunking your content into smaller fractions and smaller segments, to allow the brain to recover and find a new attention to work with. Now, let's look at a few Menti examples that support that brain-friendly learning. Why I wanted to show you this is because I want to show you how easy it is. When we talk about the science behind learning, the science behind good questions, the whole topic comes with a bit of a heavier connotation. This will be complex. I need to be an expert. I have to have an extensive experience in this. But actually, in reality, that's not the case. We can design questions that are simple for us to create and easy to implement without necessarily dedicating a lot of extra time and effort into doing that. So I don't want you to feel scared of the concept of brain-friendly questions just because it sounds complex. The first and probably the easiest way to talk about brain-friendly questions and Menti is talk about retrieval practice. What retrieval practice basically is, once again, it helps strengthen neural pathways. What we mean by this, if I'm to ask, what was your main takeaway from last class? Tomorrow, when I meet my students. Apologies if you can hear an ambulance going outside, it's rather loud. But if I'm to ask this question to my students, what was your main takeaway from last class? What I'm asking them to do is a very simple task. Tap into what you can remember. The more we ask our students to tap into the memory, the more we ask them to concise what they can in a simple form, the more that knowledge will solidify and it will allow them to build upon later on. These are 4 different, very simple examples of questions you can ask the next time you meet your students. Feel free to screenshot it if you wanted to do it right now, or you can also wait for the recording of the session and the link to the presentation after today's session to get access to this. But I highly encourage you to do this. It is the very basic of brain-friendly questions. It allows us, once again, it allows us to tap into what we already know and build from there. This is an example we have here from the State Business School at Oxford. How do you feel before a high-stakes, highest certainty decision? This is not a formative assessment. It's not asking about a specific topic, but it's tapping into a previous experience in previous knowledge. And sometimes this is enough for us to understand where our students are coming from, what experiences are they bringing in, and build that emotional connection to the topic that we'll potentially be covering. Here we have another one, simply phrased by putting in your opinion at the very beginning. This is from community college, I believe, from a communications class. What are the rules for different forms of communication, email versus texting? As you see, it's an extremely simple question, but what it does to the brain is that it connects to a previous experience, it is applicable, it's easy to understand, and I can use my own words to answer this question. I don't have to worry about maybe quoting someone else or tapping into a textbook. It just allows me to connect to the topic that we're covering today through my own lived experiences. Here we have another example with with open-ended again. It was posed after a case study exercise done in nursing. And here the question is simple. Reflect on what you just uncovered. How did collaboration in this particular case affect the patient's journey? So what we're doing here is you still have presented your content, the theory, there is a case study, but in order to activate the brain and the learning behind it, you're asking a simple follow-up question to just reflect and try to connect the dots between previously learned material and potentially future connections as well. This is quite popular in terms of prediction exercises. You can flip this question by just simply asking your students to predict what would happen if XYZ is to occur. Your students don't have to be experts into that particular topic to answer that question, but what it will happen is that they will emotionally connect to the answer because their experience, their confidence, their knowledge is presented. So feel free to wrap it up in that way as well. And this is the last example over here for those of you that prefer to use multiple choice questions. And I saw that some of you already had selected multiple choice as questions they tend to use. Here we have a business question, why do companies often fail during rapid growth? Just putting the question as why and framing it to assess and tap into not just understanding what is a specific topic in a theory, but actually identifying the connections between theory and potentially practice as well. I will pause here for a little bit because we explored a few questions that I know that today's topic is heavy to some extent, but I wonder from your own teaching experience, what would be a brain-friendly question you could ask in your subject area? One that really gets students thinking. And what I've put here on the left is a snippet of what elaboration practice is. That is part of brain-friendly learning processes, focusing on the why and the how maybe. So if you can sit back for a little bit, reflect in your own scope, in your own subject matter, what would one question be that you can ask tomorrow that can get your students to think a bit deeply and either reflect to the experiences, make connections, or maybe even analyze? Mhm. So far, we have some great examples over here that I'd like to shout out. What do you think journalists are doing well in 2025? Connected to an emotional response, connected to lived experiences, connected to personal opinions. Give me an example of how you implemented infection control since our last class. Once again, bridging theory with practice. Wonderful. What do you think would happen to the medical profession if XYZ happens? So once again, here we're talking about moving away from the usual quizzing to our students that is focused on that theory and that is focused on identifying the patterns, identifying the answers based on, have I understood this information correctly? Am I able to say what is correct and what is wrong? We're tapping further into that. And I'm wondering now, just because I saw a question in the chat in there, when I use the AI grouping, for the AI grouping to work, first of all, your institution, if you belong to an institutionally supported Mentimeter subscription, needs to have activated the AI functionality. If they're not activated, you'll be able to see a button when you go into Menti and build stuff to request that. If it has been activated, once you have an open-ended question like this one and you have 10 or more responses, you always get this little bar in here that shows you that you can group responses if you want to. So I wonder what would happen if I group now, because we have different questions about completely different subject areas. So let's see what AI will think. Personal experience. So we have more answers about personal experience and reflections, answers about future actions, application scenario, fighting misconceptions, decision making. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is one of my few, exercises for you after the session. Think about this. What can you do tomorrow that maybe hasn't been done before in terms of questioning to your students that will help them think a bit deeper and reflect a bit more? Now, we're going to go into the more exciting stuff about today. We're going to move away from the theory behind brain-friendly questions, and we'll focus on Bloom's taxonomy. And why we're using Bloom's taxonomy today is because it's a fantastic, well-used, well-loved framework for designing the learning objectives for our students. But oftentimes we tend to stop there. We use Bloom's, we apply it to the learning objectives, and then we take the questioning that happens in class, the formative assessment that happens in class in a slightly different manner. So what we're going to do here is do a quick assessment, just in case I need to kind of walk you all through in terms of what Bloom's is. But how familiar would you say you personally are with Bloom's? Okay, we have quite a versatile, I would say, audience here today. The majority of you are more on the comfort front. However, we still have quite a few folks in here that might not have experienced Bloom before, worked with it, or maybe even know what it is. So I'll take the next slide over here to just very briefly walk them through that. So please bear with us if you are familiar with it. Once again, Bloom's taxonomy is a framework that is categorized, that is created usually for categorizing educational objectives. So the learning outcomes, the learning goals, the learning objectives of your course. And by default is designed to promote critical thinking and help students move beyond the initial, I understand this, I remember this, to actually, I can use whatever I have just learned to evaluate, to assess, to create new things. And once again, you can use Mentimeter to design questions that actually address all of these levels, because the framework is fantastic in such a way that it gives us all of the verbs we can potentially be using. We don't have to create anything from scratch. We can just find the verbs that kind of apply to what we're trying to achieve and take it from there. And what we're going to do here, I'm just curious, because there's one thing for us to be familiar with Bloom. It's another thing for us to be comfortable utilizing it. So if you think about the questions you ask your students in class, either through Mentimeter, other polling softwares, verbally, whatever shape or form, where do you think most of your questions currently sit? And here is a very good flow, I guess, of some of the verbs to guide you through that self-assessment. As expected, I would say, we still have quite of a versatile group of responses here. We do have a few folks that go all the way to create, which is fantastic. What I want to say over here is that you being by remember or understand doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It is a taxonomy. It is a staircase that we need to go through. No one would be able to create anything, assess, evaluate, analyze any kind of information if they're not able to, first of all, remember it and recall it, and then fully understand it. So all of you that have labeled themselves over here, that is perfectly fine. You're helping your students develop the base that they need to develop deeper knowledge. What you can, however, do more of is just walk them through the rest of the steps. And hopefully I will show you some examples of how to do that later today that would make that process a bit more clear. What we're going to do today is we together are going to go through one of my favorite pastries of all time, and this is banica. I'm originally from Bulgaria, and this is a pastry that has been widely celebrated, loved, made, eaten, basically my whole childhood and beyond. It is a traditional Bulgarian pastry. You can see it for breakfast. You can see it quite extensively during New Year's Eve, for example. We tend to put little notes in the banica, so whoever finds the note will have the best year ahead, or maybe it's a coin, so you'll be the richest of them all. Many different traditions around it. Overall, it's delicious. It's phenomenal. And what better way for us to learn how to develop information and deepen that information than talk about food? And one thing I want to mention over here is I apologize if anyone is fasting today. I'm really sorry for that. And if also you are, as you will see, eggs or milk intolerant, I apologize for that as well. But hopefully later on, you'll be able to tell us how we can make this more appropriate for different diets. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to go through the ingredients. You don't have to remember everything in a specific detail, but I ask you to try to. The ingredients are phyllo sheets. We need a pastry. We're going to be using eggs. We're going to be using a bit of yogurt. This is quite prominent in all of the dishes in the Balkans. There's Bulgarian yogurt, or you can just use Balkan yogurt. You can also use Greek yogurt, but it tends to be a bit sweeter. But if that's all you have, that's fine. We're going to use quite a lot of cheese, white brined or feta cheese. We're going to sprinkle a little bit of baking soda, and we have some butter. So as you can see, it's quite lovely, but it also can be quite heavy. However, it's all worth it. So keeping those ingredients in mind, what do we do with them? We, as any other baking recipe out there, start with preheating the oven. We grease the baking pan, preheat the oven, let it do its magic. While the oven is preheating, what we need to do is take all of those ingredients and mix them together. So we have the eggs, we have the cheese, we have the yogurt, and we have the baking powder. Just mix them together into a nice mixture. Then what we need to do is just simply layer it. You take one phyllo sheet, you put a little bit of butter to make it nice and moist for later on, put some of, as you can see over here, some of the mixture, and then roll it. And then you keep repeating that until you have this beautifully layered banica. If you don't have a pan that is this shape, you can figure out something else, but this is usually the traditional way of doing it. And once you have done that with all of the sheets and your mixture is done, the only thing you need to do is just brush the top with butter. As we know, it's important to have that moisture when we're baking pastries. Put it in the oven and bake until it's golden. 45 minutes to an hour, it's usually what it takes. So this is how you make banica. It's simple, it's easy, and believe me, it will be extremely delicious. What we're going to do now to test how blooms can be applied to a learning journey and a learning experience is we're going to start with the first area. The very bottom of the Bloom's pyramid, it's all about remembering. Can my students, can you recall basic information about this specific topic so I can build on from there? And these are some examples of active verbs that can help us usually assess that information. So my question to you is very simple. What are the overall main ingredients for panica? Okay. If this was an actual cooking class, what I would be doing is I would be addressing any misconceptions that come along the way. We obviously have some folks that have just answered one of the ingredients. That's perfectly fine for today. But if someone else has added an extra ingredient that wasn't there, this would be my right time to assess that, fight that misconception, and make sure that we don't have any challenges going forward and don't set the house on fire, basically, if we randomly add an ingredient that might do that. Wonderful. So this is a simple way. Can my students remember the concept? Just ask the what question and you'll get there. This is another example if you don't want to assess the remembering side of the learning experience by asking open-ended questions. You can ask a simple multiple choice like this one. Responses are closed off in here. I can put test votes in here, but you can frame it the opposite way. Which of these is not? One thing to remember here is that we are very good as humans at spotting patterns and remember things that we have seen before in one shape or another. So someone being able to identify yeast here doesn't necessarily mean that they would be able to list phyllo, feta, cheese, and eggs if they were asked that question. What it means is that they recognize the other ingredients in here, and that makes it a bit more easier for them to do that. And the person that says, can I comment? Yes, feel free to post it in the chat or over here. Alrighty. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next phase. So you can remember the basics ingredients for panica. However, do you understand how to make panica? And what we're going to use here as a verb to help us achieve that assessment is the verb describe. Describe how to make panica. One note here, because we don't have the whole day today and it's not a cooking class, you don't have to put all of the details and all of that, but walk me through an overall flow. What would it take for you to make one? And I've hidden here the results to avoid that groupthink and bias. Alrighty, mix ingredients, bake, spread butter on top, very important. Heat oven. This is also another example of how you can use the questions that follow the understanding flow by checking if a very important step has been understood and mixed. When we talk about baking or cooking in general, sometimes we just need to remember that we need to preheat the oven first. And I'm guilty of not remembering that. And then I end up with a ready-to-go panica and I need to wait for 20 more minutes for my oven to preheat. But that's an important reminder over here as well. Wonderful. I won't go through the answers over here, but this is bake it. But this is an example of how to do it. Just use the verb describe to help your students walk themselves through that process and for you to assess where they are. Next one, we're going to be talking about applying. And here, of all of the verbs, we're going to be using the verb solve. If you don't have a good opportunity to use that verb, feel free to use anything else. But for our sake today, solve would be the best verb for us to use. You realize you're out of butter. And as we know, we need to put butter on the phyllo sheet and we need to put butter on top. How can you solve this problem while keeping the same flavor? You are already ready to go. You have promised panica to all of your friends. You maybe have some neighbors you can go and grab some butter from. But if you don't, what can you do to solve the issue at hand? Borrow a cup from the neighbor. Uber Eats one probably as well. DoorDash butter. Yeah, someone has said it. Go to the store and buy some. Many different solutions over here. And this is the beauty of solving a problem. We all come to different solutions that could be equally beneficial. I will tell you that I've made panica with margarine and with oil and has been equally tasty. So the fact that we come to different conclusions doesn't necessarily mean that our answers are wrong. It just means that we're applying a different type of prism to the questions at hand, and our own experiences are the ones driving us forward. So maybe we know that coconut oil is something that someone really enjoys, and they'll prefer that, and it will solve that for them quite easily. Of course, if you are teaching a subject that requires extreme precision, what you want to be finding here is the same answer across the board. In our personal case, we can have all of these. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Now that we know what it takes to make a panica, how to make it, and how to solve an issue if we run out of butter, let's analyze something. Let's move a little bit out of the kitchen itself and where we're cooking, and go into the science behind one of the ingredients. Why is baking soda added? Why do we need the baking soda, and why is it important for us to have it? Exactly. We need our dough to rise. And if you remember the picture of the panica initially, it was like fluffy. It was just phenomenal, cloudy goodness. One thing I can say over here is a tip if we go back to the solve. If you don't have baking soda, you can use sparkling water. It doesn't necessarily rise the same way, but it helps a lot. Just make sure you don't put too much of the sparkling water, because then it gets like extremely runny, and you don't want a runny panica, you want a fluffy one. So this is an example, very simple. Let's take into consideration what is happening. Let's analyze it. Let's put once again previously lived experiences, previous knowledge, and connect what we are learning today. A few more and we're almost done. Now that we know how to make it and how to solve some issues, let's go into an evaluation. Let's think about something. Let's take everything we know and apply a completely different perspective into it. Let's determine is the verb that we're using here. Do you believe it's more important for a traditional dish like panica to stay authentic? Or do you think it should evolve with new generations? Bit of a split in here. To be fair, I'm okay with all of those. I'm not one of those people that feel extremely specific and strongly about staying authentic. It is my preferred choice. When I make it at home, I make it the way I've been taught by my grandma and my mom. However, I'll be very happy to explore different versions of it. And some of you that are more aware of like the Greek cuisine, for example, you have tried their version, which has spinach in it. So all of us on the Balkans kind of have our own twist and version to it. Now, what I would like to do here, I won't use the power of AI this time. I'm going to use the power of Menti embedded features. This is an important question for me. I would like to understand why it depends. For those of you that have said depends, and those of you that think it should evolve, why do you think that's the case? Maybe those that have said authentic, you can also defend your stance as well. What I will do is I will use this little light bulb in here right between my arrows. I'll click on it. Oh, where did it go? Oh no. My thing disappeared. Okay, well, here we have a wonderful bug live for everyone to see. So what I will do is take this back, fresh it over here. Here we go. I will just click on open-ended follow-up, because I would like those of you that have, those of you that have answered either evolve or it depends, to let me know why you think that's the case. And this is a simple way of checking for further details. When we're using multiple choice questions, we're pushing our students into a predefined thinking. It's boxed. However, with a click of a button from this, once again, light bulb in here, we can open up and open-end it. We have depends on who we're eating it. Allergies. Authentic tastes better. Lots about the allergies. Carry on traditions between generations. Agreed. We have to keep that alive. Wonderful. Alrighty. So once again, the light bulb over here and then open-ended follow-up can help you follow up with a simple click of a button on a question where you need more information to potentially gather from your students. Now, we're at the top of it. Let's create. Now that we have potentially tried the banitsa, we've made the banitsa, we have discussed why it should stay authentic or not, let's create something new. And those of you that voted on stay authentic, challenge yourself to think of something new. But how would we create a modern version of banitsa? What new ingredient or a twist would you add to make it more appealing maybe to those with different allergies or to different preferences? Maybe people don't necessarily like feta cheese as much. Oh, coconut flakes. My partner actually really loves putting red pepper jelly on top of it, which for me initially was kind of an interesting experience. But then, then I got used to it. Nutella. Put Nutella on the cheese, or maybe instead of the cheese, maybe fruit, nuts, sweeter version. Okay, so I should have gone with a sweeter pastry today because we seem to have a lot of folks in here that are all up for the sweets. Oh, in Texas, you can add jalapenos. Add meat, yes. There actually is another version of it. It's called different, but it does have a lot of minced meat inside, which is also quite good to be fair. Cream cheese, bacon, pecans, tomatoes. I will take this, print it out, and send it to my family and show them that we have to up our banitsa game because there's so much more we can do with it. Awesome. Alrighty. Well, this was very simple Bloom's taxonomy for you. As you can see, it has nothing to do with extreme preparation. It's not heavy. It is easy to apply. You just let the taxonomy guide you in terms of the questions you can ask and the verbs you can use. However, one thing that can happen to all of us quite easily is that we have an idea in mind, but we don't necessarily know how to execute it. And this is where we face the most amount of anxiety. In my head, I know Bloom's. I want to use Bloom's. I see a lot of value in it. I love Menti. But where do I start? What are the questions I'm about to ask? So I wonder, and I'll skip this, I wonder if you find yourself in a similar position. If you're to use Menti tomorrow, do you know exactly what questions you'll be asking in collaboration with Bloom's to help you assess the knowledge of your student and push them into higher order thinking skills? Alrighty, a bit of a split so far. Okay. Why I want to use this is because we live in, I know the new look of the dots is fantastic. I love it too. Someone's using Menti tomorrow. Okay, well, I would like to show you something. Once again, it goes back to using Mentimeter and AI, and it depends, or if institution has allowed the use of AI, if you are having a Menti license under an institutional subscription or not. If you are on a standalone plan or you're by itself, you have access to that, so don't worry. But what we're going to do is we're going to use what we call Menti AI Creator. And we will build a Menti presentation by prompting that Menti creator to build an engaging experience and utilize Bloom's taxonomy to draft the questions in hand. Let's see how we can do that. I will open Mentimeter.com. I will log in here. I've already logged in. For me, it's to go home. And then what I'm going to do is click on Start with AI. This is the brand new version of Mentimeter's AI Creator. So if you've used it before, you can already see that it looks slightly differently. It is out to, I believe, 80% of the users. So if you're not seeing this yet, you will see it by the end of next week. But what this new version does, it allows you to continue conversing with AI and build a presentation that it's exactly applicable to what you're trying to achieve based on your preset focus and interest, but also based on some prompting and feedback from AI as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate what we just did with AI this time. Create recipe. No, use the recipe. Let's see. Use the recipe for cheesecake. I would like to assess my students' understanding of the recipe and process using Bloom's taxonomy. Let's see what we get. The AI will think a little bit, and then it's going to prompt us with a few questions to make sure it understands us correctly. To make sure I create the most effective quiz for you, you can confirm if your students have already studied the recipe or will be their first time. This will be their first time. So walk them through the recipe and then use Bloom's taxonomy for the questions to assess understanding from remember to create. Like, I'm personally choosing to give it a bit of extra insight into exactly what I'm trying to achieve. But even if the AI pushes a draft and it's not up to exactly what you want it to do, you can continue prompting it here to make sure it is up to par and up to your standards. Let's see what we get. Delicious cheesecake recipe walkthrough. We have the ingredients listed here. We have the steps. Some quiz rules. What is the main ingredient used to make the cheesecake filling? Wonderful. This can address the remembering phase. Which step involves mixing eggs into the cheesecake batter? I think this addresses the understanding. Why do we refrigerate? This goes back to analysis. I think this is up to par and exactly what I wanted to have in mind. What I can do now is click on continue. And then I can add and adjust here. Maybe I want to add a picture. Maybe this particular recipe says something that I disagree with. It's AI at the end of the day. I would like to critically assess this information and adjust it. I can add pictures. I can turn some of my questions into a different form. Let's say I didn't necessarily want it to be a multiple choice with the bars. I can go and select something else that is different. This is basically as simple as the AI creation works. Just put in a prompt, give it everything you need to do, and also make sure that it takes Bloom's into consideration. Then you can really have something you can use tomorrow. One thing I would like to mention over here, if I go back to start with AI, sometimes you already have, or most of the times actually, you already have a lot of content. You're not necessarily asking AI to give you a random cheesecake recipe the way I'm doing it today. You have a PowerPoint deck with a lot of information in it. What you can do, download that PowerPoint as a text file. I think it's called plain text, if I'm not mistaken. Copy paste it over here, so the whole information you have in PowerPoint, and then put in a prompt. Use this information to create Mentimeter activities to assess my students' understanding through Bloom's taxonomy, all the way from remember to create. And what will happen then is that our AI will take your information, your content into consideration, and will build those questions for you. If you are to use them, when you're going to use them and how, it's still up to you. But at least it gives you a good indication of what is possible and how it can be done. And while I'm still here, I quickly can see, I'm trying to multitask and see the questions in the chat about the images. If I go back to Delicious Cheesecake, what I can do is click on the image over here. I can upload an image of my own cheesecake if I do that a lot. I can search, I don't know if there's cheesecakes in here. This is integration with Unsplash, plenty of cheesecakes. So these are HD images. Those are free to use. So I can use that, or I can use the GIFs. Oh, this is a good one. So let's say I prefer to use this one. What I can do now after it uploads, I need to select where I want this image to be positioned. And as you can see, I'm prompted to either leave it on the side. I can also make it bigger because I want it to be more visible. I can put it as a background image, or I can play around with like different formats and styles. But yeah, it's simple as clicking on the image button over here once you go to the slide and selecting the image you have in mind. The last thing I'm going to mention here, because we're talking about AI, is sometimes you have a good Menti deck, but there's something missing about it. We just recently released a new feature. So when you click on a new slide, let's say select multiple choice, even if you don't have anything put in here for your question in particular, you can click on suggest. And what this will do is it will read the title of your presentation and the other questions, and it will give you some suggestions. What else can I do here to assess my students' understanding? Or maybe I can just put in feedback on recipe. And I want to ask that, but I'm not sure how do I phrase this question in order for it to be impactful? How do I avoid my own bias by asking for maybe just positive feedback? What I can do after I have typed this one in here, I can once again just click on suggest, and we will get suggestions focused on feedback. Which part of the cheesecake recipe did you find most challenging? Describe your ideal cheesecake. What is one tip you would give to someone making this cheesecake? Maybe none of these work for me. I can refresh again. So there is a lot you can do with embedded AI or Mentimeter native functionalities in here that can help you ask better questions. You don't have to do it on your own. You can definitely utilize those functionalities. Alrighty. Let's see where we are. We're here, and I'll address, I see that there's a bunch of questions in here. The recap. Keep your questions simple. They don't have to be easy, but they have to be simple to understand. Avoid overcomplication, avoid extensive questions that might be too complex, unless that's the goal of it. Maybe you work in a field where it needs to be complex for students to be able to grasp it and apply it. Make your questions relevant. Mix up formats. You can have multiple choice, but make sure it's not just multiple choice. Have a bunch of open-ended, have some scales. Spark curiosity and emotion if you can. Link it to personal experiences. Rely on Blooms to guide you. And of course, use Menti. I'm going to end over here, and I'm going to hide the results. I'm going to go through the questions now, but in case you wanted to let us know if you have learned something new or you'll be doing something differently as a result of attending the session, please put it in here, as well as feedback for this particular session and all of our sessions going forward. Now I'm just going to cover the questions. We still have time. I appreciate that you used AI to summarize the responses. How did you use that feature? I believe I covered this already, but after you have 10 or more responses on an open-ended, let's see, I have 8 here. You will be getting this particular bar over here that automatically pops up, and you'll be able to group those responses if you have that feature activated. Going back to if you belong to an institutional subscription, it is up to your institution to decide whether AI is allowed and can be used, which would mean that maybe you don't have that feature activated. But believe me, you'll see that you don't if you don't. What is the best practice in terms of amount of class time to use Menti? It really depends. To be fair, it's hard to answer because it depends on how long is your class, how many students do you have, what is your topic, and what is your connection to your students. If you allow me, I would answer this not necessarily of amount of time to use Menti, because attention span, ideally something should be happening every 10 minutes or so, but sometimes it's not the case. I will answer this question by trying to push you into focusing on what are you trying to achieve. If you're meeting a brand new group of students today, no matter what kind of great formative assessment activities you do, there's no established trust. There's no established sense of belonging and understanding that mistakes are okay. So I wouldn't necessarily use whatever time I have for Menti to do a formative assessment. I will start with getting to know my students. I will tap into pre-existing knowledge. I can use reflection exercises. I can use retrieval practice exercises, but I won't go beyond that because I need to show my students that we are here to have a conversation, that they can make mistakes, and that whatever we do going forward is, in Menti's case, anonymous and okay. So frame it that way. Otherwise, 10 to 15 minutes would be a best practice if you don't really know where to start. What is the setting for the dots? How do you find it in the setup? Great question. The setting of the dots, if I go back, and I'll just add a new slide here, is a multiple choice question. So by default, it comes up as of course, the bars. It's the most prominent multiple choice appearance. If I click over here when I'm building my options and adding them in, you have a visualization type. So you have the bars, you have a donut, you have the pie, or you have the dots. And the dots are the best. We have a brand new visualization, as someone already has seen, and it looks fantastic. Let me go back. When we upload our content into the AI prompt, Is your AI then also using that as data to train itself, or does it delete, not store our content and questions in its learning history? Very good question. The way we work with OpenAI, which is the provider of AI behind the Mentimeter's AI features, is that none of the things you do are used to train the model. The data that the AI has is simply limited to the prompt itself, and then it's being deleted after. Oh, I don't want to lie to you because I don't remember it on top of my head, but there is a deletion policy in place, so AI never keeps that later on. And something else, Mentimeter's data, even when using AI, is stored on Mentimeter's end. It is not being stored at rest at AI, so you don't have to worry that it's being passed on to a third-party vendor and they're storing that information and doing something with it. We have implemented quite a lot of security policies related to that. Can upload content for the AI to use. I believe content maybe in here. Yes, it doesn't. We currently don't support uploading a file per se, so our system can read like a PDF or a PowerPoint file if you are to upload it. However, you can copy paste the text from a PDF or a PowerPoint and put that in, and then it would work that way. Can you input your own slides and ask it to generate those questions? Yes, it just has to go back to that text fill submission. So once again, if you have, let's say, a PowerPoint with a bunch of slides, download that PowerPoint as a text file. You can just go to your file and click Save As, and then I believe it's called Open Text, but it might be something else. It's being downloaded into a plain text file. Just copy paste that, put it into the AI creation builder, and then it will suggest questions you can ask based on that content. Has the video option been updated to use other formats than YouTube or Vimeo? A very good question. I see that someone has using Mentimeter for a while. We're still currently supporting just YouTube and Vimeo, but I will make sure this is passed on to our feedback, to our product for feedback. How do you add in 2 or more multiple choice questions? So you add 1 multiple choice question at a time. You cannot have 2 multiple choice questions on the same slide. Alrighty, we are right almost on top of the hour, and I would like to thank everyone that has joined us today. I really appreciate your time, appreciate you bearing with me and my extremely challenging brain today that doesn't seem to be functioning that well. I appreciate you potentially learning how to make banica. If you do end up making it or need more insight into how to make it the proper traditional Bulgarian way, you can find me once again on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share more recipes or more information with you. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate everyone joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care and go ask questions. Thank you.